All right. I want to start this episode with a very honest story. One that honestly still makes me laugh a little because, wow, the logic was not logicking. There was a season of my life where I decided that this was going to be the routine, like the routine, the moneymaker. I told my husband that after we put the kids to bed, I was going to start going for a run in the evenings around our neighborhood at night. Even as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, wow, why did I think that was a good idea? First of all, our neighborhood has coyotes. That's kind of concerning in and of itself, right? Second of all, running at night as a woman is objectively not the safest choice. And third, and this is a big one, I was already exhausted by the end of the day. But at the time, my thinking was, well, I like running, which I do. Running helps my brain, which it does. They say exercise is good for stress. I don't know about that. So clearly, this was going to work. And to be fair, I did it 3 times. I remember getting dressed in my athletic clothes before we put the kids to bed because I knew that if I didn't do it then, it wasn't happening. So we put the kids down and I'd head out for a run. Here's the twist I didn't see coming. Instead of feeling calm and ready for bed afterward, I felt amped up, like motivated, alert, ready to reorganize a closet, clean out my fridge, start a work project at 10 o'clock at night. My brain was like, oh, we're doing things now. Let's go. So instead of winding down, I'd come home, shower, and then stay up late, watching shows, doing random stuff, absolutely not going to bed on time. Pretty quickly, that routine fell apart. I stopped getting dressed for the run, stopped going out after the kids went down. And when my husband would ask, hey, babe, are you going for a run? I'd say, nope. We even tried adjusting it. I thought, okay, maybe a walk would be better. Less intense. If I walk with my husband, we get more connection. I also have some accountability. My neurotypical husband was ready. Like, ready to do this every single night for the rest of his life. And I bailed on that one too, because I didn't want to do it. And what I remember most about that season wasn't just that the routine didn't stick. It was the feeling afterward. Like I was back at square one again, trying to figure out why something that sounded so good didn't work at all. And this wasn't the only version of this. I've also had those nights where I know going to bed by 9:30 helps me. I know it. And yet, instead of getting ready for bed, I pull out my phone. I start watching a show while I'm standing in the bathroom or scrolling Instagram. Then 30 minutes goes by. I'm still not in my pajamas. I haven't washed my face. And at that point, all motivation is gone. So I use a makeup wipe, convince myself that counts as skincare, and go to bed hoping my future self forgives me. If you've ever done something like that, made a plan that sounded so good, only to watch it completely fall apart, this episode is for you. Because when evening routines don't stick, it's not because you're lazy or inconsistent. There's something else going on. And that's what we're going to talk about.
You're managing what you always do, but your brain feels scattered and you just can't seem to pull it together. The Busy Brain Do-Over from Steady State Co. is your space to recover, reset, and restart, proud of how you show up again. because you're not the problem, and you're not alone. Here, you'll find real tools and honest conversations to help you feel capable, steady, and like yourself again. Here's your host, Candace David, a fellow busy brain who believes life doesn't have to run perfectly to run well.
Most evening routines are built for a very specific kind of brain, a brain that winds down easily, a brain that doesn't carry the whole day into the night, a brain that doesn't need much transition time. But busy brains don't just shut down on command. They don't respond well to rigid checklists at the end of an already full day. And here's the mistake most routines make: they focus only on what you do at night, without accounting for what your brain is carrying into the night. So the routine asks you to relax, to be calm, to slow down, while your brain is still in problem solving mode, future thinking mode, responsibility holding mode. That's not a discipline issue. That's a design mismatch. And a lot of the time, that mismatch isn't just about the routine itself. It's about the season of life it's built for. Some routines fail simply because they don't fit your current capacity, your responsibilities, or the phase of life you're actually in. Hi, fellow busy brains. If this episode already feels a little too relatable, make sure you're following the show so your next do-over is waiting for you when you need it. And if you're already part of this community, thank you. Truly, you are the reason more people are realizing they're not broken, their brains are just a little busy. Hit follow so you don't miss the next do-over we'll do together. Before we talk about what to do instead, I want to explain why so many well-meaning evening tools don't actually help busy brains wind down. Because this part matters, and it's where so much unnecessary shame comes from. A lot of evening routines are borrowed. They're built for someone else's life, someone else's energy, someone else's brain. And when we try to drop them into our own evenings without adjusting for context, they often fall apart. Not because they're bad, but because they were never designed for us. A lot of us have tried things like journaling or meditation, stretching, or exercise at night and thought, why am I still so wired? Shouldn't this be helping? Well, here's what's going on. First, some tools actually wake the brain up instead of calming it, depending on timing. Journaling, for example, uses language, memory, and problem solving parts of your brain. So if your brain is already busy, already tackling tomorrow, replaying today, journaling can actually open more mental loops instead of closing them. Now, that doesn't mean journaling is bad. It means your brain might not be ready for it yet. Second, stillness can make a brain feel louder. For some people, sitting quietly or meditating helps immediately. For others, especially brains that carry a lot, quiet creates more awareness, not less. So instead of feeling calm, you suddenly notice everything you've been holding. Again, that's not failure, that's timing. And third, certain kinds of movement can actually increase alertness. Exercise raises your heart rate, your body temperature, and stress hormones, even when it's good for you. So for some people, moving their body too close to bedtime makes them feel energized, motivated, or mentally on, which, if you're trying to go to sleep, is not the move, not the goal you're working towards. Here's the most important thing to understand: none of these tools are inherently wrong. They just work after your brain feels safe enough to stand down, not before. So if you've tried all the quote unquote right things and still felt wired at night, that's not a character flaw. That's a sequencing issue. And that matters because what usually comes next is where so many of us get stuck. So this week's do over is about order. I call it the Order Matters do over. The next time an evening routine doesn't work, when journaling makes you more wired, when meditation makes your mind louder, when movement leaves you energized instead of calm, notice what happens next. Most of us don't calmly troubleshoot or objectively look at what just happened. We bail. We throw our hands up in exasperation and say things like, well, I guess I'm just a person who doom scrolls before bed. Ugh, this is ridiculous. These are simple things, dumb things, and I can't even do them for a week straight. Why can't I be more disciplined, like fill in the blank? Harsh, right? Those statements sound strange coming out of someone else's mouth, but somehow not so strange when your own mind says them to you. So here's your do over. Stay with me. When that self talk shows up, the moment you realize you're in the middle of yet another spiral of deeply motivating feedback, courtesy of your own brain, I want you to pause just for a second and ask yourself this question: what might I have asked my brain to do before it was ready? What came out of order? Because a routine not working doesn't mean something is wrong with you. And we all know that kind of self talk isn't actually motivating anyway. More often, it means your brain was still on duty when you asked it to shut down. So instead of pushing through or scrapping the whole routine altogether, let's interrupt the story that says, I failed. Because when you change that story, you stop quitting on yourself and you give yourself a chance to build something that actually fits. And that leads us perfectly into your permission slip for tonight. You're allowed to stop trying to make the routine work and start paying attention to what your brain actually needs first. You're allowed to let go of routines that sounded good on paper, but don't fit your life or the season. You're not behind because it hasn't clicked yet. And you're not failing because it hasn't stuck. You're learning how your brain shuts down, which is a skill, not a character trait. So if evening routines have never quite worked for you, if nights are where things tend to unravel no matter how hard you try, or if you're realizing, okay, I can see what's happening now, but I still don't know how to build this in real life, you're not missing something. This is where a lot of people get stuck. Figuring out what your brain needs before it can wind down and how that changes depending on your life and season sounds simple in theory, but can feel overwhelming in practice. That's why on January 16th, I'm hosting a live workshop called How to Build an Evening Routine that actually lets your brain shut off. In this workshop, we'll focus on application together, not with a generic routine, but by helping you design one that actually fits your brain and your real life. This isn't about copying someone else's routine or forcing you to be disciplined at the end of a long day. We'll look at what your brain needs before it can wind down, how your evenings and mornings affect each other, and how to build a simple, realistic routine that works for you. You'll leave with a personalized evening routine, not a checklist, not a template, something you can actually return to on real nights. You can learn more and save your spot at mybusybrain.com/routines. If you're listening to this after January 16th, you'll still find the next best option there. If evenings are where you feel the most stuck, this is where we start to change that. All right, my fellow busy brain friends, take a breath, give yourself a little grace, and remember, you can always start again. That's what a do-over really is. Not perfection, just permission. Talk soon.